Space Coconut.
Okay, so today we're going to do a little bit of a discussion on the plague. I don't want to call it a killer study because A, I don't know enough about the plague to, really make an educated analysis on her. I do know enough to talk about her though, so that's kind of what I'm going to do today. So it's a killer study, but I mean, it's really, I guess, a killer discussion, I guess is more what this is. Anyway, we're going to talk about the plague. And I like the plague. I do. She's pretty unique in that she gives something to the survivors that they need to deal with and interact with to counter her play style, to be able to play the match. She does something. She makes them sick, and even though the sickness doesn't really do anything to a survivor other than make them louder and easier to track close by, the sickness doesn't do anything. If they get fully sick, they are broken, but I mean, people run No Mither, people have perks to help them do gens when they're injured. Dead Hard is a thing. There are different things that they can do to adapt to being broken, to being injured. They're essentially just playing the game as if they're permanently injured. The only way out of that is to cleanse themselves at a fountain. They wash themselves and they're instantly healed to full, even if you use a manual an M1 attack to injure them beforehand. If they're injured, they cleanse themselves from the sickness, they get healed to full. This will give the plague the ability to, it's called the Corrupt Purge. Her purge turns black instead of green, and the stream will actually injure survivors. So it's pretty handy. It's a little bit of a learning curve to figure out how to do that. Tight loops are going to prevent her from accurately using it, mainly because of her slowdown that they implemented, but it's just something that you have to deal with. The problem that we run into with the plague in this regard is that the plague isn't able to play at 100% until a survivor gives her permission. If a survivor chooses not, or if a group of survivors choose not to use the fountains, then the plague just makes everybody sick. Everybody's one hit down, sure, but she is an M1 killer. She doesn't have the ability to down them with her power. Not until the survivors say it's okay. And this leads into a debate, between players about what's better, to cleanse or not cleanse against the plague. Depending on what type of plague you're going against, which Thanatophobia is probably like a go-to on her to get things done. Because if everybody chooses to, it's an incentive, really. If everybody stays broken, then Thanatophobia gets to be at full effect. If somebody decides that they don't want to do that, then they're going to cleanse and you get your power. I like using Dying Light with this because if everybody's broken, the obsession can't heal anybody, right? And if you have Thanatophobia going, if everybody's injured, then the obsession gets the full effect of Thanatophobia. So Dying Light has less of a negative side on the plague if you use it this way, which I've begun to really like with her. Whether that forces people to cleanse or not is a completely different issue, but that's the problem. The problem is that the devs are starting to give more power to survivors over the killer's power, anyway. The Legion basically gives survivors a free health state. Borrowed Time is a status effect that, or not Borrowed Time. Borrowed Time is a perk that gives a rescued survivor deep wounds, and they essentially have a free health state to get away from the killer. I believe many people are confused as to why a killer has a beneficial effect stapled to their power in regards to survivors. But we're not talking about the Legion. The Ghostface is kind of another example. His stock can be powerful, but the way the maps are laid out, it's not really. Depending on which map you're at, it's going to dictate how well you do with the Ghost if you use the Ghost the way the devs intended to. If you decide to go the other route and go anti-healing, then you don't need to stock at all. The survivors are running around, either healing or not healing, afraid that you're gonna see them with Nurse's Calling. But they have the power to take you out of your stock ability, which is the entire reason why the anti-healing build for Ghost came about. his stock being able to be disabled by survivors is a very, very large downside. Add in the fact that the stock itself is kind of buggy. Survivors can't knock you out of it, and sometimes you get knocked out of it behind a wall. There's a weird time buffer, I guess, and it makes it pretty unreliable. Plus, the way it works in its entirety makes it less reliable to use than going the anti-healing route. I've kind of sucked it up in regards to the Ghost, and I've started to go anti-healing with him. Even though I don't like anti-healing over anti-gen, with the Ghost, it's just more effective because of his ability to go stealth and go into stealth mode. The Oni, his power is dictated whether or not you can hit survivors. If survivors decide to not heal, similar to the Plague, you don't get as much blood from them, from an injured survivor. So, I mean, if survivors decide to stay injured and not heal, they're one hit down, just like the Plague, but you're going to have a harder time gathering your blood. It's still possible to power up, though. I mean, if they're all around gens, you can gather up the orbs that they leave behind, so it's not as bad as the Plague. But survivors do have a say in that matter. If you're against a very good survivor, you're going to have a hard time catching them and getting that hit off before other gens are finished. There are other killers that have counterplay, but not outright denied the use of their power due to survivors, and that's where the Plague falls. And I think this is one of her biggest downfalls, or her biggest problems, because the power shouldn't be in the survivor's hands to use her power. It really shouldn't. The Plague's power is pretty strong, but I don't think it's strong enough with the looping counterplay and the stealth mode gameplay you can use. I don't think it's that powerful. But like I said before, I'm not a Plague main. I don't play her as much as I would like to, so I can't say for sure. But I mean, if you're against good survivors, being able to use the Corrupt Purge, I don't think is going to help you too much. And that's kind of where I stand with her. I know it's just a quick thought. It's not anything groundbreaking or revolutionary or anything like that, but in the same way that perks should affect the killer and shouldn't debuff survivors, killer powers shouldn't be toggled or activated by a survivor's action. It's kind of like saying the hag would only be able to place a trap at a spot a survivor walked in or crouched in, because of mud or whatever. Leaving the power in the survivor's hands is a bad idea. The Plague isn't a bad killer, but she's not nearly as good as she could be because of where they decided to place her toggle switch for her power. I hope in the future that we're going to start seeing less of these killers whose powers are dictated by survivor actions. Although the trend of the Ghost, the Oni, and the Plague, I'm not entirely sure that's in the cards. I feel like the next killer might not have their power dictated by survivors, but at least the next next killer will. If not this one, the next one. And we're going to have this problem all over again. Unfortunately, the devs don't really listen to us. Nobody listens to me. And, maybe they shouldn't. It's just me running my mouth, having an idea. But as long as we play this game, we're kind of just stuck with what they decide. But thankfully, in the same way that the survivors have a choice whether to let the Plague use her power, we as players have the choice whether to keep playing this game. So for now, I'm going to play it like an idiot, but there is always something else that we can try, which I might look into. But for now, that's my general thought on the Plague. If you liked what I did here, if you liked this killer study, leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you didn't like about it, and we'll kind of go from there. I'm going to take it easy with the video making. I want to make daily videos, but I'm not going to just yet. I'm going to take my time. I have a few ideas that require scripts, so I'm going to do that. And I'm not a funny person, but I'm going to try to be. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. We will try it once, and we'll see how that turns out. So look forward to that. Oh, before I forget, if there's who's the next killer you would like to see in a killer study? let me know. Until next time, I'll see you in the fog.